So I would like to introduce our next speakers for this session. Marie-Frances Bentvelzen, Senior Director of Client Success from Concur, an SAP company. Please welcome our speakers. Thank you.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. My name is Marie-Frances Bentvelzen. I'm the Senior Director of Client Success for Concur, which if you're not familiar with, Concur is a travel and expense management company that really allows companies control costs, cash flow associated with expenses, travel, and invoice. I hope many of you probably traveled here today using Concur. So I wanted to talk and spend a little bit of time today talking about the harmony between sales and customer success. I have been doing customer success for about 5 years, been at various different companies, and I'm happy to say that I've had some awesome successes, but I've also had a lot of spectacular failures. And today I wanted to talk to you a little bit about some of the learnings from my failures and how I've been able to achieve some of the successes when it comes to working with my sales counterparts. And so why is harmony important, right? It's not just a lovey-dovey, unicorns and rainbows feeling. By achieving harmony with your sales partners, it can actually lead to real business results, including, upsell and cross-sell velocity, decrease in churn, driving customer satisfaction, and of course, getting your customers to a place where they feel more of a partner rather than just a customer or a member. And finally, if you do it right, you can actually foster a greater sense of teamwork. And actually, one of the taglines that we have in our client development organization at Concur is the power of one. And it's the power of one between our client success team and our sales team. We talk about it at every meeting. All the leaders talk about it, regardless of sales or customer success. And it's part of every presentation and every meeting that we have with our teams. And when I think about, putting together an organization in harmony, right, you can have different teams with different goals, and you're running at 100 miles an hour towards achieving your goal. And you can have all the right parts, right? But if you put the parts together and they're not working in harmony, you can see some successes, but oftentimes it's a lot harder than it needs to be, and it can make things kind of awkward at points. And in my experience, I've seen it go right, but I've also seen it go terribly wrong. Poor communication between CSM and sales, salespeople who are surprised, right, at risk accounts or clients that terminate. Sometimes CSMs feeling like they're a glorified admin at times. No clear roles and responsibilities, and it really kind of leads to internal friction. So with that said, how many of you in this room have experienced some of this or all of this? Yes. I mean, not yes, but, right? It's a common problem. And what I can tell you is that it does take a lot of work to achieve harmony, but it really is worth it. So over the course of the last 5 years, I've worked with a lot of really amazing sales leaders. But with that said, our relationship took a lot of work. It's kind of like a marriage. It wasn't easy, and it took a lot of work, but we were able to do it successfully. And one of the things that I thought about as I was preparing this presentation is in each one of those experiences, I went through the same process. And the keys to success really have, I think, 5 different steps when you think about it. Is one, where you are in the evolution of your company, right? I've been at companies where I was employee number 7, right? To where I am now at Concur, which I'm obviously employee number 1,000, 3,000, 4,000 and something, right? So it really depends on the structure of your company, not only how you are structuring your customer success organization, but also how your sales partner is structuring the sales organization. Next, it's a commitment. Not just a commitment from your sales counterpart, but a commitment from the wider leadership team around what the vision of success really means at your company. And also role clarity. It's not good enough just to say, salespeople, you sell, and customer success, go make the customer successful. That's not enough. You have to spend time and effort having a deeper level of conversations across departments on what the role is of each of your teams. And then you have these great ideas, you've put together the strategy, but what does it actually look like when you execute it? because sometimes reality is a little bit different from your vision. And finally, shared goals, right? I've been in an organization where we thought we had a great strategy, we were working well together, but we quickly came to realize that we didn't really have shared goals. Each of the separate groups really didn't have skin in the game around the success of the other group. So I'm going to spend a little time talking to you today about what I've learned in each of these stages at different companies and what's been successful and what hasn't. So when you think about evolution, this is a really important piece and really the building block of how you're going to get to a place of harmony with your sales counterparts. I've been in a company where I had a customer success team that was the jack of all trades, right? They did upsells, they did renewals, they did adoption, they did onboarding, right? And it was just because we were a new company, we were a startup, right? All the way to a company that has separate and distinct functions around new business sales, current client sales, and customer success. And so understanding where you are in the evolution of your business and agreeing on what it's going to look like is supremely important. And one of the things that I would say is the biggest lesson that I've learned, particularly coming from some small startups back in the day, is I wish I would have separated the customer success and the sales piece function sooner. Do what you can to separate those two separate and distinct things. Once you understand where you are in your evolution, it's not just okay to get with your sales leader and say, okay, you're doing sales, good, we good? Customer success, we're good. I've learned the hard way that I entered my last company. We sat around at our executive team meeting. We talked about customer success. Everyone nodded their head in agreement. Yes, yes, customers should be successful. I would probably hasten to say that you're not going to ever sit in an executive team meeting and hear someone saying, like, no, that's not important, right? But what I did come to find out the hard way is walking out of that room, I was jazzed, I was excited, we're all on the same page. In the coming months and weeks, it was clear to me that the actual definition of customer success was very different mine than the sales leader. So what I did, and it's really worth your time, is I actually spent hours, weeks, and days and did an offsite with my sales counterpart where we really dug in to what the clear roles and responsibilities are. I actually sat with my sales leader and some of the sales team through an entire sales cycle so I could be empathetic to the challenges that they face. And I asked my sales counterpart to come sit with me on some onboarding situations, some teachable moments when we're teaching customers, and also some at-risk client situations, so that we were working from a place of kind of mutual understanding around what you actually do, right? Nothing's more infuriating than someone saying, oh, sales is easy, you guys have the easy job, and conversely, oh, customer success, that's easy, you just get to talk to customers all day, right? Because that's not true. I mean, yeah, we get to talk to customers, but their state of happiness varies dramatically, as we all know. And once you have agreement, right, customer success and the role of the customer is really complicated. I really made it easy with 4 buckets. You all know that there's 800 other things that I could put on this slide, but at the end of the day, are you really clear on who's doing renewals, whose job it is to demonstrate value, what that looks like, who's responsible for upsell and cross-sell, and finally, driving adoption. And those are really, I think fancy customer success words, but what the hell does that actually mean, right, within your organization? And it really leads to having the conversation about clearly defined roles. And I'm talking get in the weeds with this stuff. Whose responsibility is it to do what and when? One of the things we've seen really successful at Concur is we've spent a lot of time as a management team and executive team talking about role clarity and what that means. And to give you perspective, we have a client development organization. We have a sales team that's responsible for sales of upsell and cross-sell to our current installed base. And we have customer and client success, which is the kind of the partner to that organization. And separately, we have a new business sales organization that's purely, hunting, whereas our team is farming and customer success. And one of the things that I found in my experience is when you say somebody owns the account, People get their feelings hurt. People get, upset and uptight about who owns the account, right? It doesn't have to be that way, but at the end of the day, you need to put a stake in the sand and really be clear about who owns the account, because you can't say everybody owns the account, right? Because you'll get back to the place you were in the beginning, where people aren't clear around what their roles and responsibilities are. So what's really worked well, and we've seen a lot of great success, is at Concur, we've said our client sales execs own the account relationship. Specifically what that means is they own the strategy of what new services and products to sell. They're coordinating any resources needed to kind of drive their sale through the pipeline to close one. And they're responsible for relationships with decision makers and executives specifically. And finally, to assist with retention efforts. It's a little bit nebulous, but I'll tell you what that means in a little bit. And finally, client success, really. They're the owner of adoption, and at the end of the day, their job is to maximize value. And I know that's like a fluffy word, but really at the end of the day, no one's gonna pay us any more money if they don't think that the money they're investing today is worth it, and they're seeing value, and that's the role of our CSM. Their relationships are typically with power users, admins, the ones who are in the system every day, owning the system within their companies. And finally, their role is to design the retention strategy. So in our conversations putting together this role clarity, we spent a lot of time thinking about the messaging to this, because it's not enough just to talk about it with your executive team and your management team. You actually have to get your teams to buy into this, right? And sometimes that can be challenging, particularly with that first kind of bold statement, owner of the account, right? People just get really nervous. So one of the things that we've messaged to our team, it seemed to resonate, is this idea of the perfect play. So it's an analogy, sports analogy, sorry, but it's one that we use that seems to resonate with our teams. And when you think about football, right, you have a quarterback. When you think about, great quarterbacks, Russell Wilson, of course, right, obviously, go Hawks. And you think about Russell Wilson, he's responsible for executing plays, he's a team leader, but at the end of the day, any successful quarterback has a coach that they work with who is responsible for designing the plays, right? And different plays are designed based off the customer, what your end result is going to be. And when we think about the analogy of the perfect play, this is how we related it to our team. Hey, your salesperson is the quarterback of the account, but at the end of the day, you are so immersed with that account that you're responsible for the retention strategy. And as a matter of fact, probably in the many conversations that you're having with the program admins, the power users, you're gonna have the opportunity to potentially source some sales opportunities, but that's not your responsibility. That is your counterpart's responsibility. But the good news is that you're gonna be working so closely together that you're gonna talk about all these things, right? Your sales partner is gonna know when there's an opportunity. Your sales partner is gonna know when an account's at risk. And conversely, your CSM is gonna know who their sales partner targets are, right? And so talking about this in theory is great, but how are you gonna execute it, right? At the end of the day, you're actually not gonna execute it. It's your CSMs that are gonna have to execute, own, and actually believe in the communication and this idea around harmony together. And so one of the things that we have found has worked, again, depending on the evolution of your company, is how you segment your business. And there could probably be a whole session on how people segment their businesses differently. It's a hot topic. But how we've done it, particularly in Concur, it's been really successful, is we have this idea of strategic accounts, right? It's your higher ARR accounts. There's a little bit more high touch. And in these accounts, we have one salesperson paired with one CSM. It's a one-to-one relationship between sales and CSMs, and they work together all the time. They're partners. Right? Then you have mid-market, which is a larger book of business. Depending on the space here, we have a one-to-one and sometimes a one-to-two, right? But where it starts to look a little different is when you are at scale, right? We have tens of thousands of customers, so having a one-to-one relationship for tens of thousands of customers doesn't really scale, right? But you can take some of the ideas that you've talked about, including role clarity, and work out a way that works for your business. And in our business, what we've done is we ensure that the same CSMs, while the relationship isn't necessarily one-to-one with the small business, they are working with kind of the same group of salespeople. And why is that important? Because in order to be successful, there has to be communication, right? You have role clarity, you know your structure, everything's great, you have this great strategic plan, but this is where it all breaks down, is where the rubber hits the road, when you have sales and CSMs that are actually executing on this. And what does it mean? And I think when I think about customer success and sales, and as I think back through my career, 100% of the time, the most successful salespeople and the most successful CSMs are the ones that have the highest functioning partnership with their sales partner. They work together well, right? And saying you work together really well sounds great, but it really takes work, right? And what it means is, I think the base really has to be data-driven decisions. I put that in there. It kind of goes unsaid, but it really is important. Are you actually looking at the same data? Are your CSMs and salespeople sharing information? Are they looking at the same data? It's not good enough for your salesperson just to think about their sales funnel and nothing else. Just conversely, it's not good enough for your CSM to know who their at-risk customers are and who their renewals are. You have to start talking to each other as a team and make it a priority. And when I think about success, I think a key is just really understanding how to work together. We have CSMs and salespeople that have found their flow, right? Some are very direct, some need to, talk things out more, some talk every day, some talk once a day, but at the end of the day, it really is about effectively communicate what the hell are your priorities for the week, right? Because you'll be in meetings, right, as a leader, you'll hear your salespeople talk, you'll hear your CSMs talk, and you're like, okay, good, we're on the same page. But when it comes down to your CSM and your salespeople, they're actually not on the same page, right? They have to be talking to each other about coordinated campaigns. Do the salesperson really know who your at-risk accounts are? I mean, do they ask them? Because your CSM will be like, yeah, they know. They don't know, right? And conversely, does your CSM know that their sales partner, do they know who their largest targets are for the next accounts? I mean, truly do they know? It's not good enough just saying they know. You have to be talking about this every single week, right? And I think the most important thing, now that you have this clarity piece, you know the structure of your org, you've talked about what it's gonna look like in practice, you've agreed on it, right? Is this idea of shared goals. It's really important, and it sounds really nice to say, but it really is tough to figure out what the right way to have shared goals are for your company. Because if people continue to work in silos, including their goals, you're gonna have two people running at 100 miles an hour in different directions, and eventually they're gonna crash and burn. It's not enough to say, yeah, we're partners. Oh, someone churned? That's too bad, that sucks for you. But let's talk about sales, right? And sales, CSM saying, oh, you didn't sell in that new business, that sucks for you, but guess what, we saved this account, isn't that great? Yes, they're both great that they're being successful, but have you thought through ways that they're possibility to have mutually kind of shared goals? And so, like I said, that can look a lot of different ways, and I've tried all of these. And some work better than others, but what I can tell you from experience is today, our sales team obviously has a quota. It's pretty cut and dry, but how do you get a salesperson invested in retention? And what we found works is that our salespeople, for every client that terminates, that isn't a result of a merger and acquisition or a bankruptcy, they don't get that account replaced for a year. So that's one less client that they have in their book of business to sell to, right? And on the other side, our sales team, part of their variable bonus is actually based on the success of our sales team hitting their collective quota. And how that manifests itself is really by throwing over opportunities to their sales partners to help generate a pipeline. And what we found is actually the leads that have come from our CSMs have a much higher rate of conversion than leads coming from any other source to our sales team, like unbelievable conversion rate. And like I said, these can have real results. Not just a yay, let's have a kumbaya moment and hug each other, like real business results, right? I can tell you from experience, not only in my last organization, but also in Concur, we've seen increased employee engagement within the company. We've seen a reduction in churn. We've seen an increased sales pipeline velocity. And also really just this inclusion of we're in this together, we succeed and we fail together. And it's great that I've had a lot of successes, but since I've been doing this for 5 years, there's a lot of things that I've learned. One of the things was, depending on the size of your company, I would encourage you to separate upsell and cross-sell from new business sales. And if you can't do it, start having that discussion. I've learned a lot of lessons. Particularly, I was a VP of sales before I went into customer success. And what I found is that particularly when you have new business sales splitting their time between hunting and farming, they're going to choose one or the other, right? Because it's helping them achieve their quota. For better, for worse, it's great for the company. But typically what I find is that they can do both, but they'll do one really well and the other one okay or good enough, right? It's not okay as you scale to have people that are doing their job good enough. Investing in the commitment and a shared vision of success is very important. Having a deeper conversation than what's just sales and what's just customer success with your sales leader, but all of the rest of your executive team. And regular scheduled communication with sales and customer success. I meet weekly with my sales counterpart. We talk about what their goals are for the month, where they are, changes in strategy, to ensure that we're talking to each other. Does harmony mean that you agree on everything? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I can tell you that we actually don't agree on most things. But what we do agree on is I'm really clear on what your goals are and what we've committed to the success of our organization looks like, and we've learned how to give and take with each other because we spend so much time with each other. Having mutually shared goals. Your sales team and your CSM team having skin in the game around the success of each other. Again, it's really easy to say and it's harder to do in practice, but it's definitely worth the time and investment that you and the rest of your leadership team take to make sure that that happens. And finally, there's a lot going on, and it's definitely a marathon, not a race. This doesn't happen overnight. This takes investment from you as a leader, and also from the rest of your company and as a team. So with that said, thank you for letting me chat.
Thank you very much, Marie.
Turn it over to Whitney.